Hi everyone, my name is Charlie and today I'm going to talk about my top 10 books of 2016. This isn't a list going down from 10 to 1. This isn't going to talk. These books were all deserving of being in a top 10, and thus I'm just going to talk about them from when I read them from January to December. And the first book that is on this list is Furiously Happy by Jenny Lawson. I finished reading this book on the 9th of January last year. I reread it a month later and I just finished rereading it again today. I read this book when I first started feeling the awful weight last year of not writing and the guilt of not writing, and it helped me to get over this guilt, and it helped me find ways to get over the guilt and the sadness, and it's a book that I laugh out loud to every single time that I read it, and I'm really appreciative that Jenny Lawson wrote this book. I'm appreciative of what she does, and it is a book that I feel is just vital reading. The next book on this list is Night Film by Marisha Pessl. I finished this the day after Furiously Happy on the 10th of January, and I believe I actually started it on the same day. I read so many books at the same time because I'd had a problem with my hips, so I couldn't actually move out of the chair that I was sat in at the time. So I was just binge reading books because I had little else to do. It is a great dark thriller to read that really puts you in mind of these psychological thrillers, and it is a psychological thriller, but it's a great book, and I meant to reread it at Halloween and didn't. Yes, it follows this disgraced journalist who is going after this director called Stanislav Cordova because he's just found this man's daughter dead in a stairwell. Incredibly dark and brilliant. The next book on this list is Truthwitch by Susan Dennard, which I finished on the 17th of January last year, and is a brilliant book that deals with female friendships, fantasy, and amazingness. It is blurbed by Robin Hobb, and after, obviously, last year I started participating in the Hob-along, and I saw some things in this when I was reading Robin Hobb's books. I was like, are we sure she didn't take it from there? But Susan Dennard is one of my favourite writers. She's very accomplished. I'm glad that she's trying her hand at fantasy. I'm planning on rereading this quite soon because the second book in the series, Wind Witch, is coming out, and I just thought this book was a brilliant young adult fantasy debut by an author I already knew was fantastic, and I'm looking forward to seeing how she manages to continue this series in future. Next, we have The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson that I finished on the 8th of February last year. This is the first book in the Stormlight Archive series and follows a whole host of characters in this other world that is just incredibly difficult and mind-boggling to get your head around because it is just so amazing and well formed and well thought out, and I don't actually understand how Sanderson managed to write this book. It completely blew my mind. It is over 1,000 pages long. The intrigue is there. I ended up having to listen to it on audiobook because I just got completely terrified at the actual size of this complete behemoth of a book, but it is fantastic. I wouldn't say to go into this book if you've never read fantasy before. It'll ruin all other fantasy fiction for you. Sanderson is a great writer, and I mean, obviously, this is the first book in a 10-part series, and I have no idea where the series is going. I thought that these men who were getting all this armour on them, they reminded me of the Power Rangers, and then obviously I was completely behind it, because as a child I was a Power Rangers fanboy, so I was like, yes, here we go, this is nostalgic, this is brilliant, this is great. I still haven't read the second book in the series, because that's even longer than this one, and I'm going to have to listen to that again, and it's 40 hours long, and even with double speed, that's 20 hours, and it takes a village. Next we have Freya by Anthony Quinn that I finished on the 28th of April last year. We have a bit of a jump from the last book because I did end up not reading for the entirety of March last year. But this is a brilliant book that I still question how I feel about it because it seems so startlingly simple when you read it. And it's a story about a female friendship, and I questioned whether a man could get this female friendship written well without it being strange and without it being weird. And I don't know, I feel like Freya was a very full fully formed character, and I enjoyed reading about this disillusioned character who had come through the war and had been seen as capable throughout the war, but as soon as the war ended, suddenly she was expected to return to this role of a woman who simpers and panders to every man's needs. And it was great that Anthony Quinn was talking about the double standards within that society and maybe even society today. It is one that is definitely on this list because I'm still questioning everything that happened in this book nearly a year later, and it's definitely, all of these books are worth a reread, including Way of Kings, even if, you know, it takes me 30,000 years. The next book, I'm not sure where it is on my shelves, but it is The House of Silk by Anthony Horowitz. I finished reading this book on the 6th of August last year, and I'd only started it on the 4th. It is a book that you could probably read in one sitting if you didn't have work. It is Anthony Horowitz telling a story that happened to take place during the rest of Sherlock Holmes's adventures, and follows Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson, but they tell the story that was too dark to serialise at the time. And this is Dr. Watson talking after everything else has happened. I think he's retired now, it's after the war. It is a brilliant book, and I got rid of my Sherlock Holmes collection the year before because I wasn't getting on with the writing style. But Anthony Horowitz he took the style of Sherlock Holmes and he made it more modern and more accessible, and I was very grateful for that, and I really enjoyed this darker tone of a Sherlock Holmes story. This list wouldn't be complete without a Robin Hobb book. I am incredibly grateful to Sam over at Sam's Nonsense for beginning the Hob Along, and it is why I thank her in any video where I talk about a Robin Hobb book, because these books are just brilliant books that deal with so many different issues, and I'm incredibly glad that they exist and that my attention was drawn to them. Although I think you should go and read all of Robin Hobb's works, this is the one that stood out for me last year, and it is The Mad Ship by Robin Hobb, which is the second book in the Live Ship Traders trilogy. And this is just a book that I think is phenomenal. So far it is my favourite out of any that she has written. And it continues the story of these characters, but it introduces so many different themes. And this is a brilliant series where Hobb just went wild with talking about these different issues that we all face today and that we face as a society, and the struggles that our ancestors and people in the past have faced. And although it took me a while to read, it is a brilliant book, and I finished reading this book on the 24th of August last year. Yes, I'm very glad this book exists, and I will be going back and rereading this series once I finish the rest of Robin Hobb's books. Next we have Autumn by Ali Smith that I finished reading on the 23rd of October last year. It is a brilliant book. Ali Smith is a great writer, and this book follows a character whose name eludes me, but when she was younger she made friends with this elderly gentleman, and now years later she is going back and visiting him where he is asleep most of the time in what I assume is like a hospice. And it is a great book. It is Ali Smith ruminating on all of these things that are happening in British society at the current period of time when she was writing. It is the beginning of a 4-part seasonal series, and I just think that Ali Smith's books are great if you just want to see someone experiment with prose and characterisation and discussing issues that should be talked about more in fiction. Then you should probably be reading Ali Smith. Next we have The Trouble with Goats and Sheep by Joanna Cannon. This is an amazing book. This is the book for me. This is the only book that needs to exist. This is a fantastic book that is just great and has classic British humour. I'm pretty sure Joanna Cannon was inspired by all the northern voices we have in comedy. It has comedy elements, it has thriller elements. It does this great thing because at the moment Britain is incredible. Britain is just awful. We are being terrible towards anyone who's a different race, different religion, different... If you're a bit different than me as a white man, then Britain's probably going to hate you. I mean, it hates me because I'm fat, so we've got that problem as well, but I'm also horrible, so I can get away with it. But The Trouble with Goats and Sheep isn't talking about Britain at the moment. It's talking about Britain 40 years ago, and yet you can see that attitudes are still the same. And if people are given the opportunity, people will become arseholes. And Joanna Cannon takes this avenue and shows us a microcosm, a slice of British life, but shows everyone from all walks of life in Britain in this avenue, and just points the microscope, the magnifying glass on them and says, just look at this, look at these people, look at their behaviour, and make your own opinion. And it is a great book, and one I think that more people need to be reading and need to be talking about. And finally, a book that just narrowly made its way onto this list by the skin of its teeth that I didn't read until the 2nd of December is The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater, the first in the Raven cycle. Everyone knows about this book, everyone knows about this series, and I did a review that you'll find somewhere, I might leave a link, and basically it is a great urban fantasy novel where these folks are going looking after a Welsh king. There's magic, there's romance, there's thrills, and all this other talk of abuse and stuff, and it's an incredibly great book, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the series. And them's the books. What were your favourite books of 2016? Let me know in the comments section. I hope you enjoyed this video, and until next time, that is all.